thank you for having me here, and thank you to the parties that put on this forum. It was funny listening to Tim. You said this was required for your students. I tried to get my kids here today because they were on school vacation week, but they told me they wanted to go to the park instead, so I thought that was a good trade. Anyway, it's terrific to be here on such an important topic, and it's great. I love the format that we can actually have a meaty discussion because this is an important issue. Before I dive into some of my ideas and a discussion of what the governor's role is, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am, because that drives so much of my commitment to this issue, which is to say, I grew up here and have spent my entire life, literally, going to the same spot of the same beach every summer, which is Sandhill Cove Beach in Narragansett. And when I married my husband, who's from Michigan, I said, we have to move back to Rhode Island because I need to be near the beach, I need to be near the bay, I need to be able to take our kids quail hogging in Salt Pond and go kayaking. And he didn't quite understand it, but now after living here for 12 years, he gets it. It's a part of who I am. My children, we go there every weekend. On any given weekend, you'll find them in Salt Pond, clamming or kayaking. And I mention that because on a very personal level, this is a real threat. I cannot imagine, you listen here and you talk about, the threat to our coastline and the threat to our beaches. It's part of who we are as Rhode Islanders at a very deep level. And so for that reason, among other reasons, we have a special responsibility to attack this problem, with real urgency. And as I think about my kids or my grandkids not being able to enjoy the bay or the beaches in the same way that I did, that's all the motivation we need to take this problem seriously. And then when you think about what you were saying about the temperature rises, can you imagine, the predictions are that by the end of the century, we're going to have a climate like Virginia or South Carolina. And that's scary. So the governor absolutely has a role. No disrespect to Virginia or South Carolina, but that's not, somebody cares, like, hey, it's a nice place. I understand that, but that's not the way it's supposed to be, in Rhode Island. And then something that I touched on, the disease. I had a daughter with Lyme disease a few years ago. West Nile virus, the contaminants. It's like someone said, we pay now or we pay later. Let's get ready now. These consequences are inevitable and avoidable. So that's a little bit of context for how I would approach these dual challenges of mitigation and adaptation. I will say that all of the work I've done as treasurer, particularly around the pension work, has been focused on this issue of sustainability. When I came into office, I inherited a pension crisis. I inherited a pension program that was the worst funded in the country, and we were being told if we didn't do something, it wasn't sustainable. And it's very similar because we talk about the long-term aspects here. The pension wasn't going to run out of money in a year or two. The cost probably wasn't going to bankrupt a city or town in a year or two. But inevitably, in 10 or 20 years, if we didn't fix it, cities or towns would have gone bankrupt. Inevitably, in 20 years or more, it would have run out of money and people wouldn't have had pensions. So we had to take on a challenge, be realistic about its magnitude, and be brave. Some of the topics that have come up today, and it's all about sustainability. And so that approach of being brave, being realistic, tackling the challenge, and moving for big solutions is the approach that I will take as governor to address these issues of climate change. I think the approach that the governor has to take has to be one of leadership, one of making it crystal clear that this state is committed to these issues, and one of a plan that simultaneously deals with adaptation and mitigation, or mitigation and adaptation. And all of this against the background of being in the state with the highest unemployment rate in the country and really looking, we talked about the challenges, but the opportunity is the job creation. I think my overall approach is this isn't a checklist, right? This isn't a checklist. The governor's job is to make sure that every decision we make is made with the lens of how is this going to affect and improve climate change. Which is to say, when we build our infrastructure, we're building a bridge, let's be real. The river water level is going to be higher in 10 or 20 years. Let's take that into effect. When we're rebuilding our schools, let's be realistic. Air quality is going down, let's take that into account. It has to inform our overall approach if we're going to be successful, and the same with the economy. With respect to mitigation, I am and will be committed to the distributed generation program. It's excellent. I'm proud of Rhode Island. Let's extend it and keep it going. Same thing with Reggie. I'm proud of Rhode Island. Let's not be New Jersey. Let's not get we can pull out. Let's stay in it and keep it going and expand it because it's doing good work. I've also, with respect to mitigation, called for the creation of a green bank. I'm happy to talk more about that. That's a good way to consolidate some of the great work that's going on and also attract private capital. You know, this is an opportunity to, much of what we've done already in Rhode Island, the Renewable Energy Fund, really needs to be expanded and scaled. And I think if we have a green bank, which is a clean finance authority, that will allow us, number one, to show our leadership, number two, attract private capital, and number three, this could be the way we get at the wholesale retrofitting that Tim was talking about. With respect to adaptation, we have to get serious. I agree that we need a statewide plan. I agree that we need to put pressure on municipalities. I'd like to see the state create an adaptation and resiliency revolving fund. You know, this stuff works. Look at Bristol. Bristol invested in a stormwater treatment plant. Bristol did not have a single beach closing last year. The state of Rhode Island had twice as many beach closings last year as the year before. So let's put a revolving loan fund in place to allow municipalities access to capital so they can appropriate their stormwater. Yes, I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
We were told ahead of time in 10 minutes. But so just to quickly sum up, I think that we need greater coordination. We need to provide capital available to municipalities. And most of all, we need a governor who's a leader who has the courage to take on the issue and give it the attention that it's due. Thank you.
You mentioned how the state needs to show that it's committed to dealing with this major issue. What would you do to show that it's committed? What would you do to show the State House that you're committed, if you were governor, to addressing this issue? What were some of the first steps?
Well, again, I think the state should create a green bank. Look at Connecticut. New governor came in. He hired Dan Esty. He said, let's have a green bank. Within less than 2 years, they have a $100 million green bank, and they're known for their activities around this. That could be Rhode Island. Let's stay the course on distributed generation. Let's stay the course on the Reggie program. Let's reach out to our cities and towns to make sure that they have plans in place. So I think Whitford has an excellent, they've started to put a plan in place for the next storm. You know, let's get ready. Like Tim said, we have these coastal areas. We should have a statewide plan. 400 miles of coastline, we're uniquely vulnerable. You know, let's get to work and put a plan in place so that the next time the storm comes, we can react quickly with respect to what has to happen after the storm.
The green bank, could you briefly, just for the people like myself, so anyone in this room understand what the green bank is, and also would the green bank include investing in fossil fuels?
Well,
is that part of the green bank structure?
The green bank, what it would do is it would be a quasi-public agency, similar to Clean Water Finance Authority. It would have bonding authority, and its sole mission would be to deal with issues of climate change and energy efficiency. So it would be a way to consolidate resources and talent and financing for the state. So right now we have a renewable energy fund. Let's put it in the green bank and let's expand it. $11 million is a good start. Let's make it bigger. Energy efficiency. Energy efficiency, there's a great deal of private capital available for energy efficiency retrofitting, for school buildings, for housing, for commercial buildings. If we had a green bank and an expert running it, that person's job would be able to attract that kind of private capital so that we could do these retrofits. That's been happening in other cities and states. We should do that here. Prior to becoming treasurer, I was involved in starting and funding a company called Nexium. Nexium is a private company, and they do installations. In fact, I was at Quonset yesterday at Disney. They have one of the most powerful rooftop solar arrays in the country, and it's in Quonset by this company, Nexium. That's a company that is funded with private capital. Green Bank might consider working with a company like that so they can expand in Rhode Island. By the way, since 2006, that company has created over 100 jobs. So again, the silver lining of all of this is, let's get Rhode Island ready, face climate change, and let's put people to work in the process.
Well, the divestment part of that, and that's, if you're going to be committed, that's a huge step by saying we're going to divest from fossil fuels. That's the biggest problem with Mr. Professor King mentioned, the power plants. Would that be one way that part of the Green Bank idea or part of...
I think that is a good idea, but that would be a separate, this is a bank which is a, like I said, similar to the Clean Water Finance Authority. This is not investing in, certainly would not invest in fossil fuel companies. This would be an opportunity to make capital available, bonding capital, public capital, private capital, to invest in green technology, alternative energy efficiency.
Okay, so a separate issue then, I guess I'm going to...
A separate issue, I think that...
The vesting, is that something that we have to start thinking
Yes,
about? I know you
absolutely.
are on Brown students that put pressure on it, but universities do not.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. In fact, as treasurer, one of the things I've done that I'm proud of is we administer the defined contribution portion of the state retirement system through TIA-CREF. And as a treasurer, I went to TIA-CREF and said, we need to start providing sustainable investment options for people. And we did that. And we're one of the few states in the country that have done that. So absolutely.
Thank you, Treasurer Raimondo.